Stephanie, thanks for coming on the show today. Could you take a second to introduce yourself and tell me about the work that you do?
Yes, of course, Sean. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Stephanie Ketron. I am the Vice President of Learning and Development for Westgate Resorts, and I have the privilege of running a great team that leads the learning strategy for enterprise-wide learning. And some of the things that we're involved in is frontline, day-to-day, on-the-job training. We are involved in performance improvement. We are involved in the new hire orientation experience, really welcoming those team members as their first day. And then any training opportunities for leadership development. So we really lean heavy into leadership development and what that looks like for the organization.
Thank you for sharing that. So let's start with leadership development. What are some of the qualities or characteristics that you want your leaders or your emerging leaders that might be taking the training? What do you want them to embody?
For leaders, when it comes to leading self, it's really thinking about some of those things like emotional intelligence, right? So, do I have the emotional intelligence as a leader to be effective? And I think that that's one of the things that's really important when we talk about us as leaders and how we evolve
Yeah.
throughout our careers, right? Is really understanding that emotional intelligence piece and really being able to understand ourselves and what emotional intelligence we bring to the situation at hand.
Yeah, because if you can't like know what you need or know how the emotions impact you, it's like it's going to be more challenging to kind of nurture that in a leadership role or in a team that you have, right?
Yes, correct. So if I don't understand those emotional triggers that maybe I have myself, I may struggle with leading others, with leading other individuals, and really understanding the emotional triggers that they have, right, as individuals and as humans.
Okay, so emotional triggers, and we're talking about work, and you brought it in. Now, this personally, emotional labor, right? I think is a huge part of leadership that doesn't always get the spotlight. So the fact that this is one of the top skills, or in that at least in that leading self area, and I think it is. Emotions are the drivers of our behavior, and motivators for so many things. Yet sometimes we're up against a belief that emotions really don't have a place at work. Was this like always part of the culture, or had there been a shift in recent times? Like, how how is it received, basically, that you have to learn emotions and how they work and become emotionally intelligent as a leader? How's that
Yeah, I
received?
think it has always been part of the culture, but I don't think it's been part of the culture that had such a focus on it, right? I don't think that maybe we never called it that. Maybe we never said this is emotional intelligence. This is what it looks like, right? And
Yeah.
this is what some of the reactions could be if you aren't aware of your own emotional intelligence, right? And that of others around you and those that you lead. So I do think it's something that it's very well received within the organization and something that again as a leader is just so important to really start to take a step back and understand those emotional triggers that you have as an individual and how they may impact the people that you're leading. And then also understanding the emotional triggers of the people that you're leading, right? And what that looks like for them day in and day out.
So, on the teams that you work with, and I expect, so correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of that ability to understand how emotions are at play for you, being kind of in a hospitality at a resort setting, right? This could directly impact the experience that your guests would have too, right? Is that along the lines of the thinking of, like, or does that come into the emotional intelligence education and development that you have?
Yeah, I think it's really important that our leaders can start to spot some of those cues, right? I mean, think about it. Set the scene for you for a second,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You
please.
walk into you walk into one of our resorts and you've just traveled all the way from Pittsburgh to Orlando, right? Maybe you took a car ride and you have young children in the car and it's kind of crazy, a lot's going on, and you walk in to check in, and you're flustered and you're overwhelmed because all the other things that are going on. If we aren't aware of those emotions, right? And we're not seeing those things in the everyday situations that are happening. We may overlook or miss them, and it may ultimately impact the guest experience because I may just go through the motions of checking you in and not at any point not ever say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I noticed that you have young kids with you and those kids look like they might be a little hungry. Can I offer you, some popcorn? May I do this? May I do that? So I think that's where the emotional intelligence really plays in, especially at the frontline level and especially with our interactions that we're having every day with our guests and our owners.
Yeah, I heard you mention kind of self-awareness in there too, and awareness of others' emotions and yours. So that's at the heart of, I think, emotion skills. And I gotta say, personally, I hate the term emotional intelligence because it implies that like you either are intelligent, and what's the opposite of intelligent? You're either emotionally intelligent or you're emotionally stupid, where I think, or emotionally dumb or whatever. But emotion skills and people's exposure to them, right? I feel like most of us stop having direct learning around emotional expression and emotions. I don't know, was it fourth grade, maybe fifth grade? Maybe if something happens, you have some type of intervention where maybe go to therapy or you learn something. But do you often run up against like sometimes people are learning these things for the first time as part of the program that you guys put?
Yes, I do see that sometimes. I think people are maybe there's a lack of self-awareness, or different cultural things also play into that, and different cues that you have to spot and recognize in those ways that I feel we still have to continue that educational piece,
Hmm.
especially in hospitality.
Yeah.
Hospitality, it's in the heart of everything we do, right? Making sure that we're taking care of our guests, and our guests are not just our external guests coming into our resorts or our different outlets. They are our internal guests too, right? Those team members that work for us as leaders, those team members that work for this organization. And so yes, I do find that at times, maybe they didn't know or understand their own emotions, let alone to understand those of others. And a lot of times we wrap it into, empathy as well, putting yourself in
Mhm.
someone else's shoes. Like when you teach it in that way, I think it becomes a little bit easier to digest initially, because I, like you, John, also am like, really, we had to call this emotional intelligence. Like,
Yeah.
so I like what you said too, like maybe it's an emotional skill, right? Do you have that skill set? So
Yeah, I learned that term kind of reading some of Mark Brackett's work. He does a lot of work on emotions. A book, Permission to Feel, is one of that changed my whole perspective on that. Just emotions as a skill that you can lean into. Um, when I think of like the broader like leadership development, right? So emotion skills is a category and something that you focus on. Um, when like I don't know if it's been since COVID, but there's just so much changing. We've got AI, we've got, more and more automation, and human interaction is changing. What are some of the other skills that are important, or what's on the minds of employees? What do they expect from leaders or like teams like yours to provide them with to be well, to have what they need to do their job?
I think a lot of individuals are also looking for the growth, right? And I think growth opportunities, they might look a lot different today than they did 10 years ago, right? Or even just a couple years ago prior to COVID, because like you said, there's so many new skills now that have to be learned. And then you bring AI into the conversation and that opens a whole nother door, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely see that team members within our organization are constantly looking for that growth. They want to know what is my career path look like, and maybe it's not upward mobility, but even if it's like lateral movement, like can I move around, can I experience new things, can I try new things? If I'm not great here, can I do something somewhere else?
Okay. Um, yeah, having options is definitely, I think, good for engagement, especially as you're growing or kind of trying to get exposed to new things. Um, I'm assuming people come to the resorts to like unwind, recharge, relax, maybe enjoy some of the parks that are close around, that sort of thing. What type of things do you focus on around like the employee well-being?
Yeah, so from an employee well-being standpoint, we really offer them a couple of different opportunities, right? So we have things like adoption assistance, right? For those that may be like looking for like that family well-being and that family outlet and wanting to do something like that, right? We offer different like EAP programs that are provided to them on a ongoing basis if there are different things that they're seeking or need support with. One of the things is in our culture is really about vacationing, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned it. People go to vacation and to unwind. So another benefit to us is our ability to go to different properties and actually take our own families on vacation to those properties, and some of the perks and the benefits that go along with working in the hospitality industry. I do see that as a well-being benefit, right? Because vacations are so important and being able to disconnect and recharge. And then for those individuals in their everyday to day and their interactions with their leaders day to day, a lot of our leaders do different things within operations, right? So they may have town halls that they do on a monthly basis where they bring everyone together and they really celebrate those wins and all the achievements that the department and or the resort has had. So we do a bunch of different things like that.
I love it. Now, are most of you on site, or do you have a lot of remote employees as well?
So we have mostly on site because we have resorts and hotels,
Yeah.
right, from this end of the coast all the way to the other. But our contact center team members are remote. So we do have a portion of our population that does work remote.
Okay, so focusing on the in-person stuff, I think it's probably a little easier sometimes to build that interaction. I know we showed through COVID, which I'm sure was different in the hospitality organization, but most places really showed that they could be effective remotely to some degree. But with such a heavy focus on the in-person, like how do you know if you're getting it right from a culture perspective or getting it wrong?
So we actually do a yearly engagement survey,
Okay.
and we actually change that survey to be fully focused on the engagement piece, right, and the well-being piece. So a lot of times you can ask those survey questions in many different ways, and so we do have a great team here at Westgate that's been able to rewrite those survey questions to fully focus on the engagement and then focus on those additional benefits, some of the ones that I mentioned, and
Hmm.
really get the employee's perspective on how are we doing, right? Are we doing well? Are we engaging you well? And if we're not, tell us how to improve. And this year's the first year we transitioned that survey to an engagement survey. In years past, we've done that survey, and I will say we've still seen great results from it and great action plans come from it. So when those results come out here in the next couple weeks, our leaders will be able to sit down, analyze the results, and then make action plans for things that they're going to implement and do. And then once we do some of those things, we do send out like a continuous communication of the changes that we've made, right? So some of the
Okay.
benefits I mentioned earlier on about adoption benefits, some of that came as a direct result of feedback that we heard about our benefits and some of the things that our team members really felt they were missing out on.
Okay. Now, did I hear you correctly? The rewrite of the survey is out, but you don't have the results in yet?
Correct. It just ended last week,
Uh,
and so we do not have the results yet.
Okay. Because I was wondering, do you have any ideas or thoughts on how, I guess, what the expectations are from employees around what the companies like what's expected of companies to keep them engaged? Has that changed recently or
I will say one of the things that I know I hear a lot, I do in my role, I have the privilege to go out to resorts so often.
Mm,
Just this week, I spent time on one of the resorts, walking around, just like talking to team members and having conversations. And one of the things that our team members really, I hear them say a lot, is just transparency and communication. And I think companies sometimes miss the mark on this so so much, right?
yeah.
And it's like this, it's one of the things that's so small but could be so impactful. a lot of people will accept the change if they know why the change is happening or if they know what's coming, right? And so I
Yeah.
think just that transparency and that constant communication, a lot of times there's a disconnect, right, from like your corporate offices and your field workers and like how is that communication being handled from each team? And so I think a lot of times we had seen that, right? And so I'm hoping through this engagement survey, we see that they believe the communication has increased and that they have more knowledge on what's going on and more transparency on, what's going on and back to the benefits. What are those benefits to them, right? To be team members with Westgate.
Wow. I like it. It sounds like a great place to work, even if it's just for the fact that you get to go to your the resorts with your families too, right?
That is true.
With programs and opportunities to grow. I mean, it does sound like a really nice place to work. My hat's off to you. Are there any specific programs that you haven't mentioned that you think help set Westgate apart?
So a couple of the other programs that, I think my team oversees that help set Westgate apart is every company has some type of training team, right, or training
Yeah.
program. And we have a training program on the frontline level that's called our Certified Field Trainer program. And those team members are a direct extension of our department. They work in the field though, and
Okay.
they do on the job training. So they deliver on the job training to that new hire, but they don't just deliver it once and done. They see that new hire journey through 90 days, which is unique to us
A
because
long
not a
time.
lot of companies do that, right? I've worked for other big brands who do a great job, but I'm your buddy, John, for the next 2 weeks while you're learning, and then you're out
That's
on your own,
yeah.
right? Yeah. And so we take them through that journey, right? Through the first 90-day journey. And we make sure that, they're set up for success. So when they come out of training on the other side, they feel like, okay, I still have this person also as a coach and a mentor to really be successful for the tenure of my, time here at Westgate. I think that's very unique and very important. And it also helps set up our frontline team members for that first opportunity to grow. That's not a supervisory role, but allows them some type of authority to be able to be a little bit more prepared when they are ready to step into that next level of supervisory responsibilities.
Okay, so growth seems to be a pretty big part of the culture there and having opportunities to grow.
Yes.
All
Yes,
right.
we've had many team members at Westgate who have grown throughout their careers. Our CFO started in the mailroom and now is the CFO of the company, right? So,
There's
um,
movies and musicals about things like that. I love it.
right. So, and it's same thing. I started at Westgate almost 8 years ago. It'll be 8 years in February as a corporate trainer, right? I was a frontline
Right.
trainer in the resorts and now oversee the entire learning and development department. So,
Wow, that's quite the journey. I love
yes.
it. So, if someone was trying to, maybe they're on the front lines, or maybe they have yet, they're trying to get in at Westgate, and they want to make sure they have like some good skills. We touched a little bit on emotional intelligence and the benefits in the approach to that. But if there was a couple skills that you think an emerging leader, right, someone who wants to climb but wants to get that experience, where do you think the best focus of their time would be early on in their career?
I think I'm asking myself as I'm thinking about this in my head is like, is this a skill? But like the hunger and the desire to want to know more, to want to learn more, and also the ability to speak up and offer suggestions and solutions and to not be intimidated by doing that, right? So I think that at times when you are growing in your career, you may not always want to raise your hand, right? You may be
Yeah,
like, I don't know if I should, like, I don't know if I should bring this idea. I don't know if, this is the right time, or maybe, they've tried this before and it didn't work.
right.
But I think in order to grow your career anywhere, not just at Westgate, I think you have to be willing to say, have you considered this? Have you tried this? Right? What is they used to tell us in school? The question you don't ask is the only stupid question is
The one that you don't ask.
the one you don't
Yeah,
ask, right?
right, right.
Um, And so funny enough, if you asked anybody on my team, they would say, "Oh, she's the person that asks really uncomfortable questions." But
Okay.
asking really uncomfortable questions has helped me grow here. It helped me grow when I was at Applebee's. It helped me grow at Disney. It's helped me grow in different ways throughout my career in different places, because I want to know. I'm curious. So I guess maybe that would be the skill, right? Having curiosity.
Hunger and curiosity.
Yeah.
Okay. So I gotta say, like you have a lot of confidence, it seems, right? And you come across that way at least. And you know, the concept that I'm kind of hearing, even though you haven't really said it, is like psychological safety. Like, so
Mm.
when you feel psychologically safe, then you can challenge the status quo. You can ask those uncomfortable questions. Like, what's your secret sauce? How did you get to a point where you are able to just like kind of, I don't know, just ask that and challenge those things?
I mean, I would say that there's a lot of psychological safety that has been created for me in the position that I'm in right now, right?
Okay.
And the organization and the team I work with, and just Westgate and as a whole, right? Westgate in general. I do think that there's a lot of that created. And I would say that I've had leaders along the way that have created that, and I've had leaders along the way that maybe have not created that at some point, right?
Yeah.
In my
Oh, yeah.
span of my career. And I think that it's unfortunate at times that you learn the most from those leaders, right? But I think that
Which ones? The ones like the negative experience.
correct
Yeah.
the negative experience. And so I think that's really important for leaders to understand that if people aren't speaking up, you may need to go look in the mirror, right? Like if people
Ah,
aren't speaking up, you may need to ask yourself, am I the reason someone's not speaking up? Listen, I've been that person, unfortunately. I've been that person that created an environment where someone didn't feel that they could speak up, right? And I had to take a look in the mirror and say, wow, how did I do this? How did we get here, right? What did I do? And I think it's just my nature of challenging a lot of things, right? Like I do like to challenge. Um, but at times you have team members that doesn't necessarily work for. And I
okay.
think it's about understanding your team members on an individual level and understanding what works for them, right? I've had people that work for me that I can question everything and push back on them constantly, and then vice versa, right? And you just have to really understand, and maybe also really understanding their journeys and where they've came from.
So building that trust, building the relationship. And you're right. I feel like that level of questioning can really strengthen a relationship or end it. If
Yes.
somebody doesn't understand their perspective or understand, fully where you are coming from. Is psychological safety is something that you train or work towards, either from a culture or L&D perspective?
It's not something that we've trained in the global sense. It is something that we've hosted a couple one-off classes for over the
Okay.
years since I've been at Westgate. We have had some leaders request it, but I do think it's something that's very important. It's not something that we've seen that there's a huge disconnect for, right? So again, I'm looking at those survey results that are coming in
Right.
year over year
It's
to better
already happening.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, like is someone feeling this way? And if we find a need, then we would meet that need. But at this time, it's just not something that we've globally done. But I do think it's something that's really important that we should consider.
And the reason it came up is because it seems woven through a lot of the things that you've been talking about,
Right.
so I love it. I may end up seeing you walking around at one of your resorts one day if everything goes right. So it's like, who doesn't love to go on vacation? Um, Stephanie, I really want to thank you for your time today. Unfortunately, we've hit the limit here. So thank you so much for your wisdom and what you shared with us around the culture for Westgate and your tidbits for career growth. It's been really nice talking to you today.
Yes, John, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you too. And hopefully I'll see you at one of our properties. My favorite, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I might get in trouble.
One of your favorites is
I'll tell you later.
okay. All right. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.